Welcome back to Luxury Travel and Living with Grace, around the world and back to the East End. Tonight, we celebrate a true legend in journalism and a cherished member of the Sag Harbor community, Professor Karl Grosman. After over 6 decades of tireless investigative reporting and half a century molding young minds at SUNY Old Westbury, Professor Karl Grosman is retiring from full time teaching, but his work still continues. He is a living legend in the field who has tirelessly worked to uncover the truth and hold power accountable for decades right here on the East End and beyond. Welcome, Professor Karl Grosman.
Great, and I've not seen you, Grace, since you were my student.
Right.
How many years ago? Almost 20.
Almost 20 years ago, class of 2008.
You look the same, Grace.
So do you, Karl. It's so nice to meet you. It's an honor to have you with us today, and I feel like it's an honor that we are reuniting again.
It's wonderful. It's great to see. I mean, I've retired from full-time teaching, but it's a wonderful thing to do, to teach. If you got something to teach, I always felt I had something to teach.
Right.
And in fact, this afternoon, I continue to teach investigative reporting.
Really?
Which is actually at Old Westbury, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, class at a college or university in investigative reporting. In the case this afternoon, I just did it online. Saves me post-retirement from having to drive 150 miles round trip
Huh.
from Sag Harbor to Old Westbury and back.
Wow, that's really great. So you're also working on a new novel, right?
Well, it's not a novel, it's a nonfiction book. Once I tried fiction, I tried a novel, but that was many years ago. And what my books have all been, I've written 7,
Mhm.
are all nonfiction, pretty serious stuff about nuclear power and toxic chemicals and the use of nuclear power in space, weapons in space, heavy stuff. Sometimes I think as I write these books, you couldn't make this stuff up as fiction.
Oh, wow. I would love to hear more about it someday. Maybe if you'd like to share some insights on your nonfiction book, you know.
Well, this last one, this will be my 8th.
Mhm.
And now that I've retired full-time teaching, I'll have, I'll have, I hope, the time to finish what would be my, well, it's the summary of what I've learned about energy and the environment. In fact, the working title is May We Choose Life. And it's about toxic chemicals and nuclear power and all this kind of heavy stuff, and how, in fact, there's safe and clean alternatives for all these polluting processes and products. That's a stress in the book. And then there's other points now that I've been so deep, particularly in terms of journalism, environmental journalism. I teach it at Old Westbury.
Right.
And I do a lot of it in all forms of media.
Hi. So, Professor Grossman, I just want to thank you in appreciation for referring me to LTV and to Ellen and for being my mentor like for 17 years and still reuniting with me and still inspiring me to continue my career path in broadcasting as a TV host correspondent. So I'd like to honor you and thank you for that and your retirement and your continuation in in journalism and your new nonfiction book. So I have a question. As noted in your Trailblazer article, which is, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's right here, but you guys can Google it online. As noted in your Trailblazer article, in your 47 years of teaching, how many students have you guided and mentored to pursue their careers as journalists and become a success in the field?
so many. I mean, that's is a Yiddish word. It's called nakas,
Nakas.
for pleasure, uh, pleasure in terms of your children, or nakas in terms of your students.
Right.
And I've had, when you figure, I've had maybe 300, 400 students a year between my classes and placing students on internships. I mean, I placed you on an internship, if I recall.
Sure. WNBC TV for New York. I've interned there for the medical news department, and I just want to say thank you. I've done quite well.
Well, that's what inspired me into journalism. In fact, I originally wasn't planning to be a journalist. At Andrew Jackson High School in Queens, where I grew up, and you grew up in Queens too.
Yeah.
The high school newspaper was like run by a bunch of girls, nothing wrong with that, from Laurelton.
Oh,
And it was
no.
like a sorority.
Oh, God.
And I mean, I read all the newspapers. There was a lot of them
Mhm.
in the 1950s in New York City. I was always interested in current events. But I didn't think of reporting, or didn't think of being a journalist. Actually, what I thought I would be doing, and I ended up doing it in any case, was becoming a professor. And I know that, I mean, it's hard to remember what you were thinking when you were 14, but there was an Eagle Scout Day in Queens, and I was placed with the president of Queens College. And I was an Eagle Scout. And that's what I thought I would go into, maybe teaching sociology or history, and then I decided, actually, I could have got to Queens College for free at that time. I had gotten a Regents scholarship, but I decided to go see America, and I went to a college called Antioch College in Ohio, in Yellow Springs, Ohio, particularly because they had, it's a work study program, very early. Antioch created this, where you go to school for, they didn't have semester system, it was a quarter, 3 months. And then you get an internship, they called it a co-op. And you go back and forth between an internship and going to the campus. And it actually was a 5-year program, because you would be on an internship half the time. And I selected an internship in Cleveland, Ohio, sort of like a little New York, Cleveland, very much metropolitan part of
Nice.
Cleveland. Only because my girlfriend, who was from Long Island, she was from Huntington.
That's Janet, right?
Janet,
Oh.
at this point, we've been married, how many years? 64 years.
Oh, boy.
Long time.
Congrats.
We got married at 19. But here we were at 17 when we first met at Antioch College. And she was going to take an internship at Cleveland General Hospital to work with young people with tuberculosis, kids with
Right.
TB. So I figured I'd go to Cleveland to be with Janet.
Yeah.
And there was an internship at the Cleveland Press. And this is a corny story.
Oh, no, I'd love to hear.
Well, above the entrance was the motto of the Cleveland Press: give the people the light and they'll find their own way. And sometimes as a copy boy, I was just a copy boy then, you would work in the city room all alone, or maybe there'd be a couple of reporters, and field some telephone calls that would come. And if it was something about an event in Cleveland, you wrote a memo and gave it to the city desk, or if it was something involving Shaker Heights, which is a suburb of Cleveland, you gave a memo to the suburban desk. But if somebody was calling about a story of injustice and inequity, and real horror story, you took that memo and you sent it to, it was a clutch of about a dozen. They didn't call them investigative reporters then, nor were they called muckrakers. I mean, during the period of 1900 to 1914, there was this muckraking era in this country of investigative reporting. In fact, the Cleveland Press and its first owner, in fact, it was his first newspaper, E.W. Scripps,
Mhm.
very active during the muckraking era. And when I was there in 1960, the culture that Scripps created still existed. In any case, he wrote a memo to the investigative reporters. And the amazing thing to me was once the information was documented of this horror story, this injustice, this inequity, and published in the Cleveland Press, they must have did 2 exposés, at least 1 expose a week. It was a very real crusading newspaper. It solved the problem half the time. Half the time,
Only half the time.
it resolved, well, half the time's a lot, considering some of these probably gave the people the light through journalism, and that resulted in action and a resolution of these situations. And I thought that this was so neat, so amazing, that I jumped back on my motorcycle with Janet on the back, my wife on the back, my girlfriend then on the back, and we headed back to, I mean, Cleveland was a nice city,
Right.
but it's not my territory. Headed back to New York, and my goal was to become an investigative reporter in New York. I particularly wanted to get to the New York Herald Tribune, which was my favorite newspaper. It was a morning paper like the New York Times,
Right.
broadsheet paper.
What year was that?
This is 1961.
1961.
I went to a while to school here in Suffolk County. Adelphi was beginning a school. It became Dowling College, but it was then called Adelphi Suffolk. It was an extension of Adelphi University. It was in Sayville. And I went there for a while, for a year. It was okay, but I couldn't sit in a classroom for very long. And I mean, ultimately, I went to the New School for Social Research and got a graduate degree, But at that point, I really wanted to get into journalism quick. So I answered an advertisement at the New York Times, in the New York Times, for a reporter at the Babylon Town Leader, in the town of Babylon. And when I got there, a man by the name of Robert Moses had just announced that he was going to build a 4-lane highway the length of Fire Island. And even though Moses had the media in the New York metropolitan area in his pocket, as Robert Caro in his book, The Power Broker, documents, not the Babylon Leader, not at the community where he lived. They challenged the folks of the Babylon Leader, Moses, all the time. And in any case, I went to Fire Island, never been there, the next weekend. And I mean, visiting some of these 17 communities, beautiful communities, so interesting, and the nature, the sunken forests and so forth, and interviewing. By luck, I was able to connect with a journalist named Charles Collingwood, a playwright named Reginald Rose, a historian, Teddy White. I mean, I was able to do these interviews, and local people.
Right.
And I wrote a story about what the 4-lane highway we would pave over the communities and quash the nature. And that ran in the Babylon Town Leader. And I stayed with the story for 2 years, pointing to an alternative, a Fire Island National Seashore. And that came about. I mean, it was kind of my first victory. I mean, I wasn't alone, but I was actually the only journalist challenging Moses and crusading for a national seashore. And the Babylon Town Leader, of course, carried my pieces. I worked there. And also, we were joined by the Suffolk County News, which was in Sayville, based in Sayville, and then the Long Island Commercial Review. And just we plugged away. And again, and then from there, I went to the Daily Long Island Press. And I stayed there, and I ultimately, after covering cops and courts, and kind of proving myself, they had me do investigative reporting, which is what I wanted to do. the Herald Tribune, unfortunately, had gone out of business in '67, so I
Oh,
couldn't jump to it. But the Long Island Press also went out of business in 1977. And at that point, I got a call from SUNY Old Westbury, uh, Deidre English, who had began in the investigative reporting course at Old Westbury, had taken a job as editor-in-chief of Mother Jones, this magazine out of San Francisco, a real investigative reporting magazine, and they needed somebody to teach the course. And they knew my work, and actually I was recommended. One of the people at Old Westbury was friends with Irv Molotsky, and he was a New York Times reporter who worked a good number of stories with me, and he recommended me to teach there, and I did start there in '78. And I took the column that I had written. They also had me write a column every week at the Long Island Press, starting in '69, to the weekly newspapers here in Suffolk County, and actually these days some of them are in Nassau. And began doing television as well. I was on a kind of, I was kind of on a Meet the Press show at Channel 21, and it was like 3 reporters asking. Jerry Ambrose, in fact, was running for Congress. And after the show was over, Bob Civiello, who was the program director, came running down from the control room and said, "Hey, you're good in TV, you're warm, and let's have lunch tomorrow." And I did. And I got a show called Long Island World. And I mean, I went on to become the nightly anchor, co-anchor of the nightly news at WSNL TV, 5 years. And also I was the chief investigative reporter at WVVH TV, which is out here. And meanwhile, I taught at the same time. And
Professor Grossman, tell us a little bit more about your television program that you hosted for 34 years, Enviro Close-Up. What was it about?
well, that I began in 1991.
Oh, that was later on.
1991, so it's 34 years. And I was kind of, what would be the word? At Old Westbury, I've taught a course called Politics of Media. How sometimes media, well, like these days, the capitulation of media in these times to what Trump wants is, I mean, media is supposed to be a watchdog, it's supposed to be a check, supposed to be a monitor. That was the original vision of the framers of our country, of our Constitution. And in 1991, I really felt that the media in general in this country wasn't doing what it should in terms of, well, some of these issues that I've tackled, like nuclear technology, nuclear power. And I know that a lot from Long Island because the Long Island Lighting Company had planned to build 7 to 11 nuclear power plants on Long Island.
Oh, wow.
In fact, Shoreham was the first constructed, and there would be 3 at Shoreham, 4 at Jamesport, which is on the North Fork. In fact, Lilco was even interested in a nuclear plant in Bridgehampton, here in the South. I wrote a book about this called Power Crazy, because it really was, Grove Press published it, truly power crazy. In any case, I felt that, well, to communicate with people, I mean, I've done radio, I've done TV, I've done newspaper work, written for magazines, written 7 books, and now again, I'm on my magnum opus.
Wow.
Would be my 8th book.
That's
But
amazing.
television is the medium that most people, well, if you're gonna give people a light, do it through television, I feel that most people focus upon, not that newspapers are gone or magazines or books are gone, but TV is so I decided to start a nonprofit TV company called Enviro Video.
Oh, interesting.
And we began syndicating a TV show, actually a company called Free Speech TV. It's out of Denver, syndicates my show. I'm the host. And we've done well over 700 shows, as well as documentaries and specials. And it's broadcast on, nearly 200 cable television stations in 40 states, the major satellite networks, Dish, DirecTV, and so forth. I try to, well, we used to have on our website of Enviro Video, too hot for TV. But
Nice.
then we started getting donations, contributions. Again, it's a nonprofit operation
Right.
from excellent civic-minded and environmentally minded organizations. I took off the too hot for TV. I think I don't want to push it too much about what we're doing, but that it would be too hot maybe for their contribution. I mean, this is the Park Foundation and other significant foundations, and still going strong. With my interview show like yours here is called Enviro Close Up with Karl Grosman. I'll be taping in a week a show with. Well, this is just an aside, but suddenly last year I get this script. I could show this to the camera. Atomic Bill and the Payment Due. And it's about a reporter at the New York Times who was embedded in the Manhattan Project. Mm-hmm. But he did more than be embedded, more than just watching. He got deeply involved in nuclear technology to the point like when there was the Trinity test and they detonated the first nuclear device, this man, William O. Lawrence, who, or was it maybe I think William A. Lawrence, he wrote the press release for the Manhattan Project claiming it had been an ammunition dump explosion and no one was hurt. And he went on for the New York Times for many years, glorifying all sorts of nuclear technologies, absolutely omitting or minimizing all but totally that word radioactivity and what radioactivity, I mean, he really was a propagandist for this. So I get this script and I see, all kind of names here, Oppenheimer and General Groves, and suddenly in this script, I see Karl Grosman, which is, what's this? And I pick up the script, and again, here's the script.
Yeah,
The play, as we talk now, and it's going to have its premiere tomorrow in Ohio at a school near Antioch, actually, and it's by Libby Halevi. It's important, and
I would love to see it.
yeah, well, this character Karl Grosman just weaves through this script, kind of countering this William Lawrence and his abandonment of independent journalism and his promoting nuclear technology of all sorts without mentioning its terrible downside, and that's radioactivity.
Professor, let's talk about Karl. I can say Karl, right?
Absolutely.
No more professor.
I tell that to all my students. I told it to you then.
It's Karl. Let's talk about that. That's very important. I'm curious to know myself, like the downsides of the nuclear energy. What do you think would happen? How would humanity be safe? Like if there was a disaster?
It wouldn't be safe. I mean, if there was any question, the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant accident, showed that goes back to '79. In fact, I was out here doing an open space story in Sagaponack when I checked my answering machine and heard about the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, there was 2 of them there, undergoing a meltdown. And then I just committed myself to writing that was my first book, Cover Up What You're Not Supposed to Know About Nuclear Power. And my inspiration to a large degree was at Channel 21 at WLIW. They had asked me years before to do a TV show on nuclear power because of the big push to build all these nuclear plants on Long Island. And I went to Brookhaven Lab and as part of doing the show. That was established in 1947 by the then Atomic Energy Commission to develop civilian uses of nuclear power. This is like an extension of the Manhattan Project,
Right.
but to do mostly civilian work. They do some military work they have there. And I interviewed, like you're interviewing me, some of the scientists, and they looked at me and looked into the camera and they said into the microphone, well, and I asked, can they be accident? Like you just asked, what about accidents? And they said, well, maybe every couple of 100 years
Oh,
they could
boy.
be, but these machines were so redundant that they wouldn't be a serious accident. So there I was in Sacaponic doing an open space story, hearing about this meltdown.
Right.
And I said, oh, these guys were trying to bamboozle me and my viewers, and I got to sit down and write a book. So I wrote Cover Up, and the way I wrote it was not just my words like in a narrative form,
Mm-hmm.
but having documents reprinted as facsimiles. For example, everybody's homeowner's insurance, including every viewer's homeowner's insurance, just check it out. In the United States, have what's called the nuclear clause, that this policy doesn't cover loss or damage caused by radiation. Most people don't know about it, and just to kind of show, hey, that as facsimiles, I reprint right in the front of the book. I think it's page 2. The new, and I ask if this technology is so safe, why is there a nuclear clause in everybody's homeowner's insurance in the U.S.? And that book was published. Hilda Lindley, who lived out here, she's from Montauk. She was a literary agent. She tried to get the book published by a major publisher. And she came back to me after a couple of months saying, I can't believe it. They're telling me nobody's going to be interested in nuclear power after a couple, 6 months. And they won't touch it. And then finally, here in Sag Harbor, there was a small publishing house, a permanent press. Marty and Judy Shepard ran it. And at a party, telling them the story I'm just telling you now about how Hilda can't find a publisher for this book after the 3 Mile Island accident, so we'll publish it. And they did, though in terms of this problem of, again, it's the mainstream media not doing its job. After the Fukushima accident, Marty called me up and said, look, let's do a new edition for the book. And this time after Fukushima, and this is after Chernobyl as well, in the Ukraine. And let's do a new introduction and see if they'll go for the book. Unfortunately, the same problem. And so what Marty did was to, we're out of time here. What Marty did was to put it online for free. So if anybody wants to read the revised, updated edition of Cover Up, What You're Not Supposed to About Nuclear Power, just go to my website, karlgrosman.com.
Karl Grosman.
And you can download it for free, or the Permanent Press website. We're gonna, and see many of the documents involving nuclear power and learn what truly could happen if there'd be an accident at a nuclear power plant. It has happened.
That's so important. That's such a critical issue that I would love to continue show number 2 about that.
Would
What
be
do
a
you say?
pleasure.
All right. So, Karl, on behalf of our viewers, the journalism community, the entire Sag Harbor community, and the entire East End. We'd like to thank you for your dedication, your wisdom, and your unwavering commitment to holding power accountable. Your legacy will continue to shine brightly, inspiring generations to come. We wish you a fulfilling and joyful retirement and your continuation work with your nonfiction book and this whole topic about nuclear power. For me, it's very fascinating, interesting, that I would love to do another show with you about. So we know that your investigative spirit will never truly rest, and we just want to thank you so much for coming today.
It's wonderful to see
Ah.
a wonderful former student.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
That will be all for today. East Hampton, Southampton, Sag Harbor, and Watermill, and the entire East End. Until next time, when we continue show number 2 with Karl Grosman on nuclear powers. See you next time. Bye-bye.